Okay, now we've got the jib up, we've got the halyard tension correct, the luff tension, and the outhaul. And now we're ready to go sailing. So you can see a lot of these adjustments, you don't have to do anything with them once you're out sailing. You can get your head out of the boat and worry about the current and where the other boats are and keeping clear air. The adjustments are not super critical for a lot of them. Now we'll go to the main trim, and I have kind of two positions for my main trim on this boat. And one is when the breeze is up, which is the corner of the main will basically be right over the corner of the transom. Okay, so right there. And in lighter winds, it'll be just inside this face.
So you never want it right in the middle.
If I'll get onto that in a minute, because that's a good point, and you may bring it in. Now, everybody that sails these boats sails them by watching the jib luff or by angle of heel. And quite often, they don't know when they're sailing the boat by angle of heel. But if you're sailing these boats upwind in over 12 knots of wind, you're sailing by angle of heel. Because if you sail by the jib luff, the boat's just going to tip way over. So it's important to know in the particular conditions whether you're doing it by angle of heel or by watching your jib luff indicators. Okay, so there's the light wind conditions, say up to just under 10 knots of wind, and then over 10 knots, and I call that your heel driven. So, and if you heel excessively, the solution is not to ease the sails. The solution is to turn the boat into the wind. Okay, any questions on that one?
So pinch more.
Sorry?
Pinch more? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
So then you don't look at because your jib's going to be...
You're heel driven. You see? That's
so
exactly...
we don't panic if we see that.
Exactly. You're heel driven. And when I'm instructing people on the boat and I'm having trouble getting them, the boat's heeled way over and they're sailing upwind, I say, wait a minute. I put my hand over their eyes. And then they sail way better. Because they're no longer looking at the luff of the jib. They're just sailing literally by the seat of their pants. They're feeling when the boat heels over and then they're heading up. And when I'm being facetious, which is quite often, I say, well, if you push the tiller away from you, if you push it away long enough, you'll heel the other way. It's called tacking. So you can control the heel of the boat with the helm. You don't. Once the breeze is up, the main gets eased to the corner of the boat, and you leave it there, and you just set up a little bit.
Don, do you have an ideal heel or an indicator of what the...
Yeah, these boats need to, a very good point, these boats need to heel a little more than most dinghies. And in a dinghy, they're talking about as flat as you can, et cetera, like a laser. These boats need to heel approximately 25 and almost as much as 30 degrees. And there's two reasons for that. The long, narrow shape, when it heels over, the shape doesn't distort particularly. It's kind of a cylinder. It heels over, no distortion in the shape. If you have a wide boat, when it heels over, everything goes out of whack. You've got this big buoyant thing down on the low side, and the rudder's starting to come out of the water, and all sorts of horrible things are happening on a wide boat. So you have to sail a wide boat upright because it just generates too much drag once it heels over. This boat, it's on purpose, it's narrow, so that it doesn't generate that big drag when it heels over. So it's happy to heel over. And why do we need it to heel over? Well, we got that big lump of lead. We got to get it working for us, and it's got to get out to windward. So we've got to heel the boat and let the lead work. So that's why you want the boat to heel over. And of course, in a dinghy, when you're hiking over the side, you're not moving your ballast further to windward when the boat heels over. In fact, it's the opposite.
It's because most people tell us, the faster the boat, the faster you go. But in this case, it's not. So,
No.
So just like you basically want it on the side of it.
You want it around 25 degrees, which is more, I find it's interesting. Most people will sail these boats pretty close to the right angle of heel. You're going to have about 4 or 5 inches of freeboard on the low side when you're right. But that's a very tough measurement. You know, you're not going to get your tape measure out and measure that as you're sailing along. But 25 to 30 degrees is about the right angle, and I find most people get that about right when they're sailing the boat heel driven. But it is important to recognize whether you're sailing on your luff indicators or whether you're heel driven. Because, for example, if we're in transition, if you start feathering the boat into the wind pointing up, if you should be using your luff indicators, well, now you're just going to be losing power. Your sails are going to be luffing, and it'd be better if you're sailing lower. But if you're sailing on your luff indicators, you know, and you try to be heel driven, well, you can bear way off, and the boat will never heel over because the wind's too light. So you have to know which system you're in effect. And an easy way of finding out is to sail with your luff indicators flowing perfectly and bear off a bit. If the boat heels over a bunch more, it's time to be sailing on the heel-driven basis. Does that make sense? Is that your sail's flowing perfectly? If you bear off, if it tips over more, I can start doing that pinching thing.